Support for this podcast comes from MathWorks, a company accelerating the pace of engineering and science. Stick around until the end of this episode for a special segment about how companies like Nuvera Fuel Cells use MathWorks software to design engineered systems powering the clean energy transition.
WBUR Podcasts, Boston.
I'm Daryl C. Murphy, and you're listening to The Common. Associate producer for WBUR Digital, Katie Cole. Welcome to The Common.
Thanks so much, Daryl. I'm so happy to be here.
It's your first time.
My first time ever.
Are you excited?
I am so excited.
Oh, man. Well, let's get into it.
Well, I know that you're supposed to be running the interview, but I actually have a pop quiz for
We're
you.
Switching it up. Okay.
Okay. I believe in you. We'll give you multiple choice, so you have
multiple
choice. You have one of three.
All right. My confidence levels have increased significantly.
Okay, good. All right. So, question 1. What is the biggest shark that lives in Massachusetts waters? A, the white shark. B, the basking shark. Or C, the whale shark.
The whale shark.
Yes.
The whale shark.
The whale shark.
Does those grow up to 40?
40 feet. Yes, they can be about the size of a school bus.
Sweet.
All
okay.
right. Question 2.
All right.
What shark is known as the garbage can of the sea? Is it A, a tiger shark, B, a sand tiger shark, or C, a sandbar shark?
Sandbar shark.
It is the tiger shark.
The tiger shark. Damn.
They are known as the garbage can of the sea because they eat just about anything. And they have been found to have things like bottles and cans and license plates in their stomach. So they really just go for it.
What a life.
I, too, have been a garbage can. I, too, have eaten garbage in my day.
I mean,
who among us
certain
has
type of garbage we eat,
Yeah.
you know?
Not like the bottles and cans, but like Cheetos and stuff like that. All right. So question 3.
Okay.
How long can a white shark live? Is it A, up to 20 years, B, up to 40 years, or C, up to 70 years?
70.
Correct.
Ha! 2 out of 3.
Yes, the average lifespan of a white shark is 70 years, but it is not the oldest a shark can live. The oldest shark is the Greenland shark. Studies have shown that they can live over 250 years.
Oh, wow.
Or maybe even longer, up to 500 years.
Those sharks have seen some things.
Yes.
I could tell you about a submarine. The first submarine. I've seen it.
If you look at a picture of them, they truly look like they have seen some things.
War-torn sharks.
Yeah, they do look war-torn.
Oh, man. Well, 2 out of 3. What's that, a D?
Yeah, yes, like a C.
I'll take a curve.
Yeah, I think you did well.
I'm average. Well, Katie, that was fun. We're doing this because you just wrote a piece for WBUR's Field Guide to Boston, and it's all about sharks in Massachusetts. Why did you want to write about sharks? Was it an assignment, or were you just like, the people need to know about sharks?
No, I asked for this. I was like, can I please tell the people about all of the sharks that we have?
Yeah.
I grew up in New England, going to the beach. I've always been really fascinated by marine life, like picking up crabs on the beach. And my college mascot was a shark, so I've had tons of shark memorabilia all around my house.
What college was this?
Simmons.
Simmons, okay.
Go Sharks. And I think that they're really cool creatures, but also just deeply misunderstood.
Yeah, they're the pit bulls of the ocean.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's a great way to think about it. Very misunderstood creatures.
So talk to us about that. Talk to us about how they're so misunderstood and why.
Yeah, I think a lot of people think of sharks as like this Jaws-like image of just, destroying boats. Exactly, destroying boats and eating people and just like terrorizing the beach. But that's really not what they're trying to do. They're just trying to swim around.
Trying to eat garbage.
Trying to sometimes eat garbage. Most of the time, just kind of eat their fish or their skates or whatever and just live their lives. They're not really intending on hurting you. They're just cool guys.
They're just cool guys. But sometimes you get bit.
Sometimes things happen.
Unprovoked.
Right, yes.
I read somewhere that last year there was like 36 shark attack incidents in the United States.
Yeah.
That's a pretty low number. So I'm wondering, like, how much of a problem are shark attacks in Massachusetts?
They're really not a big problem. Sharks are very common. I spoke to a scientist at the New England Aquarium. His name is Dr. Nick Whitney, and he told me that
if all the sharks in the ocean all stood up and jumped out of the water at once, people would probably never go to the beach again.
But the thing is, we also go in the water a lot versus the amount of shark bites there are.
They're incredibly good at not biting us. We don't give them any credit for that.
And sharks aren't the only thing that can attack you, right?
Right. And they're not even trying to attack you a lot of the times. They probably just think that you are not humans and you're maybe splashing around a lot. They think that you're a seal or they think that you're a fish or something like that. So
how insulting. I'm a seal?
Since 1837, which is when the International Shark Attack File, they collect data on shark attacks. So Massachusetts, since that time, has only had 6 unprovoked shark attacks. The 2 most recent were in 2018. One of them was unfortunately fatal. But prior to that, the most recent fatal attack was in 1936.
Oh, wow.
So it's very, very rare. And Massachusetts is very much not the shark bite capital of the United States. Florida is. They've had in their history since 1837 over 900 recorded incidents of shark attacks. So it is very rare.
While we're on the topic, if somebody is in the water, in the ocean, and they encounter a shark, they notice a shark, what should they do?
In general, there are a couple things that you should do just to keep yourself safe when you're going in the water. Never swim near seals. That is white shark food. Seals are very common along the Cape, around Nantucket, around Martha's Vineyard. Don't swim near them. I was on Nantucket a couple weekends ago and we saw a seal and we decided not to go in the water. Yeah. So also avoid really murky water or low visibility water. Make sure it's clear water so the sharks can see you. You can see any sharks. You can know when to get out of the water.
Give each other the nod.
Give each other a respectful nod. Don't swim alone or far away from other people. And make sure that lifeguards can always see you if you're on a lifeguarded beach, just in case you need help. And if you want to make sure to double check where the sharks are, you can check for recent shark sightings or get alerts from the Atlantic White Shark Conservancy's Sharktivity app. They have pictures and information about where recent shark sightings have been.
But again, to reiterate, getting attacked by a shark unprovoked is quite rare.
It's quite rare. I talked to Jada Elcock. She is a doctoral candidate, and she works at the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution.
One of the biggest dangers to humans is humans not understanding what different wildlife is and feeling free enough to touch it. So my biggest recommendation to people is if you don't know what it is, probably don't touch it.
That's great advice.
It's great. It's great to live by.
Keep your hands to your damn self.
Exactly. If you see like a really cute looking octopus and it has blue rings on it, don't touch that. That is a very venomous octopus. Just stay away from it.
Yeah.
It's a great rule of thumb.
Fantastic rule. All right. Now, I like how we started the show with the quiz. We got into a few different types of sharks. Just how many species of sharks are there?
Yeah, there are over a dozen that live around Massachusetts. And there's a pretty big range in terms of size, in terms of what they eat, in terms of where they can live in the whole world. So they can live, from Canada all the way down to Argentina. There's a bunch of different species who have like very wide ranges. And there are sharks that can live right here in Boston Harbor. There are sand tiger sharks that come here every year to pup, which means like to give birth. That's right off of Wollaston Beach in Quincy. So they're very close to home here.
Nice. Now, we're talking about marine life, and I feel like we have to talk about climate change. How is climate change affecting sharks in our region?
Yeah, so we live in the Gulf of Maine, or mostly. So the Gulf of Maine extends down from Maine, of course, all the way down to the Cape, the tip of the Cape. And that water is warming faster than most of the water on our planet. In general, our ocean waters are warming very quickly, and sharks are moving up the coast into places that they haven't been. So species like the black tip shark or bull sharks, they've been seen farther north than they have been before, like up to New York, the coast of New York. So they're moving around a lot. And also important to think about when you think about like the way that sharks move is where their prey goes. So Greg Skomal, he works for the Division of Marine Fisheries here in Massachusetts. He told me that basically what he is looking for in terms of white sharks is where the seals go. So if the seals start moving north, then the white sharks are going to follow them.
You can think of it as just big restaurant that's reopened and these customers are coming in close to feed.
And why are sharks important for our ecosystem?
They're really important for our ecosystem. They're important to maintain a sense of equilibrium. Greg Skomal actually told me about that in our conversation.
So, the job of the shark is to control, populations of marine animals. In the case of white sharks, it is to keep, seal populations and other species in balance. So if you think of the general role of sharks as top predators is to help keep the ocean in equilibrium.
If there's no sharks, things get out of whack.
Yeah, if there's no sharks, then there's a lot of seals, which
and
can
seals
be...
are cute, but
yes,
we can't have too many of those.
We can't have too many of them because they can, irritatingly crowd our beaches, or they can eat a lot of fish that, fishers are also trying to get and throw out the fish population. So if you take away one element of an ecosystem's balance, it really throws everything into whack.
Well, Katie, this has been fun. Thank you so much for your piece and taking the time to come talk to us about it. I'm sure a lot of folks headed to the beach would appreciate this. So thank you.
Of course. I will talk with you about sharks anytime.
That's associate producer for WBUR Digital, Katie Cole. Next up, we're going to take a quick break, but when we return, we're going to talk about talking with men specifically and why it's so hard for guys to open up and get deep with each other. We'll be right back.
Support for this podcast comes from MathWorks, the leading developer of mathematical computing software that accelerates innovation by allowing companies to test technology virtually.
They're able to understand how that system's going to work before they start to begin building hardware systems.
Stick around until the end of this episode for a special segment about how model-based design is helping engineers, scientists, and academics solve today's energy challenges.
Politics has never been stranger or more online, which is why the politics team at Wired is making a new show, Wired Politics Lab. It's all about how to navigate the endless stream of news and information and what to look out for. Each week on the show, we'll dig into far-right platforms, AI chatbots, influencer campaigns, and so much more. Wired Politics Lab launches Thursday, April 11th. Follow the show wherever you get your podcasts.
And we're back. Author of Bunyan and Henry, or The Beautiful Destiny, and host of the Thoughtful Bro podcast, Mark Cecil. Welcome to The Common.
Psyched to be here.
Psyched to have you, Mark. We got you here because recently you wrote a piece for WBUR's opinion section, Cognoscenti, and it's titled, Men Want to Have Deep Conversations, How I Got the Guys in My Life to Talk. And I want to start us off by having you read us a section.
Everyone knows it's hard to get guys talking, but as a young man with a head full of ideas, I wanted more. As soon as my brain woke up in my teenage years, I wanted to talk about life, death, God, art. I was always in search of the big conversation. I grew up with my mom, dad, and 2 brothers. My mom, she was usually up for hearing me out patiently as I went on about, say, the symbolism of Don McLean's American Pie. With my dad and my brothers, I hardly got anywhere.
You say when your brain woke up. What was that like when your brain woke up? What was the moment where you realized you had all these questions?
Yeah, I think I was probably about, I was in high school and, you're just starting to get to know yourself and, you don't know as a young person why you have the desires you have and why you have like the urges to talk to people and figure things out. And I just felt like with my brothers and my dad, the only thing that was really on offer was sports. Mm-hmm. And sports for guys is like a coded way to talk about everything that's important in life. Just by talking about something like, well, how do you like how Larry plays basketball versus how Magic plays basketball or something like that? Mm-hmm. So for me, though, I wanted more than sports. That's when I really discovered books because I just figured out pretty quickly that, like, if I couldn't talk about, say, the meaning of life, right? Well, literature has been doing that for 3,000 years, and it's not the same as having, like, a connection with another person one-on-one. But what you lose in, like, the actual interpersonal connection reading a book, you gain by just how brilliant and beautiful and clear all the thoughts are in books. So that really is what started my kind of love of literature, and it just grew from there.
So why do you think it's so difficult for men to get into that zone and want to have those deep conversations with another person that they could connect with, perhaps?
It's important to answer that question to start with, like, what are the benefits of having those kind of conversations? And for me, it's like, it's so rewarding. I mean, some of the most rewarding parts of life for me are just having those conversations because they bond you to people, and you figure out what makes other people tick, and you figure out how somebody who might seem a lot different than you or might seem like you already pigeonholed them as one way, they actually have this deep, abiding passion and curiosity for this thing. That is a really joyful thing, and it really bonds you to that person. So I just want to say, like, that's kind of how I see the benefits of it. But, like, why do guys have a hard time getting there? I think there's a lot of reasons. I think that guys, number one, are kind of expected to know all the answers. Like, oh, you want to talk about, say, politics. Well, that's how politics is. You want to talk about sports. Well, that's my opinion about this. You want to talk about how to, fix your roof. That's what I think about this. And it's like, it's just sort of like, I got it all. I don't need to explore anything.
Maybe they don't want to open themselves up to being wrong.
Yeah, and just be like exposed. And again, it's not like I go to a party and I'm like, I'm going to find somebody and like have a deep conversation. I mean, it really does just sort of happen.
It's organic. It's natural.
It's totally organic. But I think a reliable way to get guys talking in this way is just to find something that they're really passionate about and really curious about themselves. And you can start by asking them about work or something. Most guys have an opinion about their job, right? But a lot of people don't like their job or don't find it interesting. But if you start digging down about what they really love, what makes them love being alive, the thing that they really want to do most in their life, and then you just start asking them about why and how'd you get into that and what's that about. Then you start really seeing how that person thinks, and then all of a sudden you're there talking for an hour and a half. And like I said at the top, books have just been such an entry point for me because, like, I'm actually part of an all-men's book club, and that's been going on for years, and it's run, it's out of Wellesley, run through Wellesley Books. That all-men's book club, we've had guys, talk about, like, losing a child, for example, and what that was like. And there's a way that this is a safe space, and there's a way that books just, like, gives you permission to go down among the whales and just talk about all your big, deep thoughts.
So you are a father, you're a husband, you have 3 sons, 1 daughter, you and your wife, and you have a biracial family. Your wife is Black, your children are biracial. How do you create that environment so that your children feel safe opening up?
Well, the piece that I wrote for you guys is sort of all about how difficult that actually is. And it was sort of only when I published my book this spring that I started having conversations with my dad and my brothers that I had never had before.
Let's take a minute. Tell us about the book.
Yeah, so the book is called Bunyan and Henry, or The Beautiful Destiny. And it's a larger-than-life adventure tale that's about the friendship between the white lumberjack Paul Bunyan and the black steel driving man John Henry. And when you dig deeper into it, it's about a lot of issues that are facing America right now and kind of the fault lines of American history and the American character. Gets into issues around racism and class and the environment and capitalism. But it all began as a story for my kids, a bedtime story. And my kids years ago were just rabid for new content, and I always had to come up with new stories for them. And so this one I came up with because I really wanted to tell a story about a white person and a black person working together. They loved that story. It sort of worked in front of a live studio audience, if you will. It took about 6 weeks to tell. And then when I got done with it, I thought to myself, hey, this could really be a work of literary fiction that could have some real serious ideas in it. My oldest son, Henry, who's just such a quiet kid. And
he's 16.
And he's 16, and he's only become more quiet as he became a teenager. And, we'll spend an hour in the car and not even say a word, not from lack of wanting, but there's just this way that, like, also you can't force these conversations, and you got to sort of, like, let them come to you a little bit, right? But he shocked the world when he, at my launch, went up there and gave this speech.
Right. And we wanted to share a little bit of that speech, but the audio was not very good. But basically, Henry gave this speech about watching you embrace the process, even when it was hard. And he talked about how that inspired him. But anyway, in your piece, you wrote that when your son did that, you were shocked. And it didn't hit you until the next day. And then it made you cry, right?
I mean, this guy, he hadn't said like 10 sentences to me in like the year 2024, like here he's got this whole speech, and I was just spellbound. And people in the signing line said, oh, how'd you hold it together? I mean, people were like, they got teary about what he said. Then the next day I was driving to another book event, and I just lost it in the car. I started crying, and then I got where I was going, and I texted him, and I'm like, oh my God, Henry, I'll never forget what you did. I'm so proud of you. I love you. And he writes back like 30 minutes later, he's like, I got you, Dad. And it was like right back to like where it was. But it doesn't matter, because like he did get up there and he did say all those things. And it's just the fact that like what I'd been going through as an author, trying to live out my dream, meant something to him and connected with him, was just so meaningful to me. But it just goes to show also like how far I had to go to have a conversation with him like that way. I had to write a whole book just to find out that he was even thinking about me in that way.
Yeah. So this conversation here is making me think about the current environment that men and young boys are living in right now. We live in a society that is very hostile towards women, hostile towards queer people. And a lot of that hostility is driven by these harmful ideas of what it means to be a man.
Yeah.
I want to know how you see these deeper conversations playing a role in combating some of that. Especially, I'm asking you as someone who has 3 sons.
Well, I think that when you have a deep conversation with somebody, there's sort of like an implicit dignity that you give that person, right? And you can't really have a deep conversation with somebody else without sort of loving them or seeing them as somebody who's worthy of love and respect. That's implied. That's table stakes in a deep conversation. And I think, while my sons may not be the most talkative at the particular ages that they're at, they know that by talking to me and talking to my wife, who's brilliant and has so much to say, like things that I don't see and things that she's experienced that I haven't experienced, between the two of us, there's just always an outlet for a conversation when my kids are ready for that. But I would just say that when I see some of this stuff out there, the misogyny it's so foreign to me. It's so disgusting to me. And it's because like we live in a house where there's so much respect for everybody. My wife and I respect what our kids have to say. The kids, for the most part, respect what we have to say. And I feel like those kinds of toxic things only really thrive when people feel negative and disrespected and like nobody's listening to them and
Isolated.
You know? And it's just such a shame to me because I do feel like this is going to sound super trite, but sometimes I'm like, man, if every guy in this country could be in a book club, like the all men's book club that I'm in, and just spend 2 hours once a month talking to a bunch of other guys about how they feel, what they think about this book, what's going on in their life, I just think so many problems would be helped by that, you know, because people just feel like nobody's listening to them.
For men who might be looking to have a deeper conversation, where can they get started? Because I imagine that might be hard for a lot of guys.
It is. I think the way to get into it is just, first of all, it just has to be natural. And it has to really be about the other person. And I think, you know, that curiosity about other people has to spring from a real place. But if you do have that and you are interested in other people and not just sort of like introducing a conversation so you can start unloading your opinions, it has to be a two-way street or kind of favor the other person, I think. They say in writing that the best writing comes from kind of like an unresolvable conflict within you, right? It's like that's where the heat is when you're trying to write a great book or a great essay, so like an issue that you just can't quite resolve, an urge that you can't quite figure out. And if you start talking to somebody and you like get to a point where like they are trying to figure something out, and you're like, tell me about that. Tell me about this thing that you can't figure out. Like, then you can maybe even like talk about how you might look at that or something. But that is when you're going to get to something really interesting because you're going to find something they're passionate about and obsessed with, and then you're going to be off to the races.
Mark, thank you for this. This has been a pleasure. I'm glad we had to have this deep conversation.
I feel the same way. I'm here anytime to come back.
That's journalist, author of Bunyan and Henry, or The Beautiful Destiny, and host of the Thoughtful Bro podcast, Mark Cecil. And that's our show for today. Thank you so much for listening to The Common. If you want to get in touch with us, hit us up on Instagram at WBUR The Common, or send us an email at thecommon@wbur.org. And now it is that time for me to let you know that The Common is produced by Franny Monahan. It's mixed by Emily Jankowski and Paul Vaitkus, and it's edited by Samatha Joshi and Ben Brock Johnson. And our theme music is Me by Hisu. And from the newsroom of WBUR, I'm your host, Daryl C. Murphy. I will talk to you soon.
Support for this podcast comes from MathWorks, accelerating the pace of discovery, innovation, development, and learning in engineering and science. Listen on for a story of how one company is using MathWorks software to help the planet.
The transportation sector is one of the largest contributors of greenhouse gases, and a lot of that is from maritime transport.
Yeah, maritime transport creates a huge amount of carbon dioxide, about 900 million tons annually.
That's Gus Block, Corporate Development Director at Nuvera Fuel Cells, who explains that 90% of all foreign goods are transported through ports and container ships, most of which run on diesel. But Nuvera is working on a way to electrify this system through hydrogen fuel cells.
Hydrogen can make all the difference between being able to electrify those vessels or not.
Cargo ships often travel far distances.
Well, sometimes they're crossing oceans, right?
And hydrogen, the lightest element on the periodic table, is uniquely suited to help power the ship's long journeys.
Fuel cells can take advantage of hydrogen's properties, being something that is quickly refueled, something you can carry on board a vehicle, and be used in places where battery electrification is impractical for one reason or another.
One reason, batteries can be really heavy. Another, batteries can take a long time to charge.
That may be possible for hovercraft or for ferries, for instance, but for long-haul shipping, it's quite a different story. And what hydrogen gets you is the ability to carry much more energy on board than you would otherwise with batteries.
And in addition to powering cargo ships, hydrogen fuel cell technology can be used to power electric trucks, heavy equipment, and also passenger cars. So, how do hydrogen fuel cells work?
A fuel cell is an electrochemical device. Each individual cell in the stack consists of a membrane that separates hydrogen on one side and air on the other.
And, as Nuvera chief engineer Pierre-François Kay explains, the hydrogen arrives at the membrane, breaks down into protons and electrons, generating power for a motor, all without the need to burn fossil fuels. In fact, they produce no exhaust other than heat and water. But implementation of this technology is no easy feat, with several challenges to overcome.
One of our main challenges that we face is hydration management.
The membrane needs to be hydrated to be permeable to protons, but too much water can cause flooding, and the fuel cell will not operate properly.
So with model-based design using MATLAB and Simulink, we created a model of the fuel cell, and that allowed us to simulate our water management controls in a variety of ambient conditions.
Model-based design. I needed to check with someone from MathWorks, the creator of MATLAB and Simulink, to fully understand what's happening.
Well, companies like Nuvera, who are using MATLAB and Simulink, are using it to model and simulate a complex engineered system. For Nuvera, it's a chemical reaction involving hydrogen as a fuel, which then is combined with air to form an electric current and water.
That's Tony Lennon, the Simscape marketing manager at MathWorks, who explains that model-based design allows Nuvera to virtually simulate how the hydrogen fuel cell will operate in real time and to tackle challenges like hydration management virtually before using physical components.
Not using model-based design means that you're going to be out there testing on real hardware. You run the risk of damaging hardware or not thoroughly testing all the operating envelope that the real equipment's going to see.
And operating real hardware can take a lot of time. Pierre-François Kay again.
There's a huge advantage to simulate all of these conditions in a virtual environment instead of building systems physically, because those are expensive, and every time we need to change a piece of hardware, it takes time.
Saving this time can mean more innovation and, in the case of Nuvera, more fuel cells to power the clean energy transition.
To learn more about MathWorks and Nuvera, and for more stories, check out wbur.org/mathworks.